Hi, friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Mental Fitness Unscripted podcast, where our conversation will encourage your healthy living journey. Inspired by our Team Quadzilla coaching motto, healthy living starts between your ears, we talk about mental fitness in ways that challenge us to think about our thinking regarding topics like habits, leadership, exercise, values, marriage, parenting, and faith. Our hope with this podcast is to sharpen you as we sharpen ourselves to be all we were made to be. So let's dive right into the conversation on this episode of Mental Fitness Unscripted. Hey, good morning, Todd.
Good morning. Good to see you, Chad.
Yeah, likewise.
There's your social distancing.
Yeah, I'm social distancing. Yeah,
nice. I like it.
Top of the pile. I don't know what else to say. I was thinking, though, because I knew that we would be on, and I'm like, oh, this silly shirt again. What I really need is some no graphics gear so that, I don't know, sometimes my wardrobe feels a little
I don't know. It's kind of fun.
Silly, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, here's a half marathon I did a long time ago.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Anyway.
Nice.
There you go.
Well, I don't want to take myself.
Scenic Fall. Scenic River Classic. Yeah. Anyway.
Nice.
We ran along the river that day.
Cool. Well, and I like to pedal, so I suppose it checks out.
Let's see, when am I? This is not what we wanted to record. I'm supposed to go help with the marathon, I think, on the 26th. That's not going to happen. I need to let him know.
Right. Yeah. So we just had the holiday, the 4th of July, kind of the midsummer.
It's one of our favorites. It ranks right up there with Christmas at our house.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's a good one.
But, I'm going to call it a close second because we celebrate it pretty
Christmas. Yeah.
Christmas is our Christmas. I don't know. Easter we celebrate pretty hard. It's probably, yeah. I don't know. Thanksgiving, okay, we like holidays, but Christmas is our.
Yeah. Christmas is the jam. Yeah.
It's the biggie. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot going on. I think with both of us, and it just occurred to me that we just shared briefly before we hit the button here that when hard things happen to us, we have a couple of options, and you if you spend any time on social media, unfortunately I do, probably more than I should. I find things that are like, the rah-rah, pick yourself up and do the hard things, and all these motivational speakers, and they're like, what are you going to do when someone punches you in the face, and that kind of thing. But honestly, that's a serious question. And so I thought maybe based upon some things that have happened recently, I'm referring to the floods in Texas, which I had just returned from that area, not directly, but it was not far away from where I was working this week. Wow, and so some people that I talked to had friends or people that they knew that were very close to that situation. And one guy lives very near the floodwaters and had pictures and was showing me, and I was like, oh my gosh, so I mean, really horrible things have happened. Without a lot of details we don't need to get into, but you've got some stuff that's been pretty heavy this week, and we just kind of looked at each other like, what do we do when life punches you in the face? And I think that's maybe something we should talk about.
Turn the other cheek, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's advice. There's advice out there that tells us maybe how we're supposed to behave or what we're supposed to do. But here's the real rub for me, is that I'm trying to raise up a young man in my house, and he doesn't have a lot of life experience, or for that matter, a lot of really awful things that have happened to him. And so I just feel like we live in a time where people don't know what to do when they get punched in the face, when bad things happen. And one answer is to despair. And that's where I feel like we're running into all of this depression and anxiety troubles, and then medicating that, and suicide, and substance abuse, and just all these horrible things that we're doing to ourselves because we really just don't know how to handle when stuff gets hard. So you've had some pretty awful things, or not necessarily awful, but just hard things happen very recently. And so I'm asking you, what do you do? How do you handle that?
And it's a great question, and I'm reading a book called "The Mountain Is You" by Brianna West.
Okay.
And it's been really good. It's not what I expected it to be, and what's funny is some of it is applicable. I don't know if I'm going to call it providence. I don't believe in coincidence. We'll call it
Sure.
coincidence, so everybody's happy. But I really believe I'm directed and led, because I want to be directed and led. I allow that to happen. I'm careful what I let in. I'm really careful about what I let in because I've got some standards that I want to abide by. But what's interesting is she points out that we have to be careful with our feelings. Feelings are important. Okay, they're very important, but we've got to put them where they belong. She also points out. She says, it's interesting. Your gut feeling is absolutely real. We've all noticed that after we had the gut feeling and then did the other thing and then realized, oh, I should have listened. And that's usually where we learn that our gut feeling is really good. But what's interesting is she's helped me define what is gut feeling and what is my emotional feeling, and
Ooh, okay.
not to become Spock. That's not where we're not flushing emotions, and I know a lot of people want to do that. They just want to get rid of them and be a machine. That's not what we were built to do. But part of what happens is in our brain we have the primitive brain that kept us alive through all these generations of uh, saber-toothed tigers chasing us, and the threat that comes, and unfortunately our brain jumps to that, and so what you've got is the fight and flight thing. Okay. I believe there's 4 stages, but we'll keep it at fight and flight, fight and flight stages. And when something happens to you, you have 2 choices. Well, like I say, you've got 4, but I'm going to narrow it down to 2. You can fight it and stand and take responsibility for it, or you can abdicate it and flee, and it's not my problem, and become a victim. Okay.
Mm.
You have that choice of whatever comes at you. So you're asking about part of what's happened to us. I'll show a picture here. Pictures are really great, right?
Sure.
So my daughter-in-law she was 32 weeks pregnant, and she started to have some issues, enough that we had to life flight her to the nearest medical school. She needed some pretty um, specialized care, if you will put it that way. Anyway, a couple of days later, this little gal showed up,
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's just been so 32 weeks. She's 7 weeks early. Mom's okay, baby's okay, but she's early, and she's 3 hours away. She's got our son and our daughter-in-law have three other children, three older children than this one. But mom needed some pretty serious surgery. They had to take the baby early, otherwise they would lose mom, and then of course the baby. So emergency surgery, they tied that all together. Everything's good. Mom's healing well, but trying to put the family together, we had to take care of those kids. Well, where does dad go? Does he go with mom and the new baby, or does he come up here and take care of the three kids? And so, they're trying to navigate all of that. And you were asking me, how do you handle hard things? And what's funny is around our house, we've learned from experience that, the panic, the of course you feel that. I mean, it comes. It's like, what do I do with this? And now you've got to make that decision. And what we've been able to do from experiences is that we've taught ourselves, okay, what's next? What step do I need to take next to fix this? And it may be a small step. I mean, it may just be a phone call. It may just be, I need to pack a bag. I need to, whatever it is. And so when we found out that this gal had to be life flighted, it was at midnight, of course. Everything happens.
Oh,
If you ever notice that,
yeah.
babies show up late at night, and all this stuff always happens late at night. I had just gotten in bed, and we discovered that our daughter-in-law was at the local hospital because she was having issues. And so we started to monitor that, and then about midnight, they decided, okay, we're going to life flight her, and it's a 3 hour drive. But what's funny is it's a hour and a half helicopter flight.
Huh.
Yeah,
It's
and
not 10 minutes. Yeah.
I know you think a helicopter flight is just bam, you're there, but
Right.
it was kind of a new concept. Wow, an hour and a half, and then I got doing the math, and oh yeah, they're only about twice as fast as what I can drive there. Um, but they had to stop on their way to refuel because with all the people and all the equipment that they had to add
Mm.
on for this situation, they couldn't put enough fuel on board to
Oh my
make the flight
goodness.
because of the weight and the balance and all that. But
Yeah.
anyway, so they flew partway, refueled, and flew the rest of the way. My son and I actually got about almost halfway to Salt Lake City from where we are. We almost got halfway there by the time she got there. And
Oh my goodness.
this was after going to their house and collecting a few things. And yeah, I mean, we made a couple of
Yeah.
stops on the way. But see, where I'm going with this is we discovered that she was going to take that flight. Well, the next step was, okay, we've got to get our son down there. How do we do that? And so we started thinking through that. Okay, what's the next step of getting him down there? Well, do I want him in that condition? He's his wife and baby are on a helicopter. He's got to drive down there. It's dark. It's through the wilderness. We have issues with deer and elk coming out on the highway at night sometimes, and that can become a real threat. He's been up, they're stressed, and I'm thinking, okay, probably the next step that I need to do is I need to go with him, and maybe
Hmm.
even perhaps drive for him. And so it's that process of, what's next? Well, what's next is we had to stop at the house. Do you have everything that you need? Well, she needs a few of these items, and so we stopped at the house. Okay, what's next? Oh, you've only got a third of a tank of gasoline. Well, it's probably going to take about a half a tank to get there, so we probably ought to stop and buy fuel. So we bought, and so it's just that what's next? Instead of this panic of, oh my gosh, my
Mm.
wife's on a helicopter. What am I going to do? What am I going to, and what happens is that the gears just freeze.
Mm.
But by taking just one more step, just one, what's next? Okay, what can I do next? And buying
Yeah.
gasoline doesn't seem like a big deal to, in this kind of situation, but it was.
Yeah.
So we're driving down. I actually I actually have some experience where I know how to track flights, and so we were actually
Mm.
tracking her as she flew, and we knew where they were. We knew when they stopped for fuel. We knew that they would. They told our son that they would have to stop for fuel. So anyway, we saw that. We saw when they took off. And then we saw when they arrived there. What's interesting is about, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes after they arrived there, the flight nurse called and said, "Hey, everything's good. We got her there, no problems." But see, the issue was critical enough that they, on the way down, they had put 3 hospitals on notice that if something happened, they may have to land there to stabilize her at a hospital. And
Oh
so
wow.
they'd put those hospitals on notice on the way down to this medical school to just in
Wow.
case. And we got there, and our daughter-in-law looked at us. "Oh, I should have just ridden with you guys. It was almost as fast because we got there about an hour after she did." And she had stabilized, and a couple of days later this little girl was born, but because she was having issues, and it finally got to the point that they had to do that surgery. But the point was is that it was the right thing to do because we put her on the helicopter with the flight nurse. We had those 3 hospitals on notice that if something
Mm.
critical had to happen. And see, that's how emergency people do they have those procedures in place so that what's the next step. And so you asked me, how do I handle that? I've never had this scenario in my head, but sometimes I'll play scenarios in my head that have taught me that process of
Mm.
what's next. Okay. I've never thought about a daughter-in-law having issues with birth and life flight. That was not a scenario I'd thought of, but I'd thought of others, and just going through that process and actually experiencing some of those things. Um, you know what to do next. Another example, man, I'm taking all the time. I'm sorry, but
No, you're fine.
another example, we've got a corner here that it's a country road, and at the time there were only 2 stop signs. So you've got one road that's 50 miles an hour ish. Most people are doing 60 through it, and then you've got the other 2
Yeah.
roads that they have to stop and then negotiate through the traffic that's cross traffic. Well, we were in this group of cars, and so there was a car, then a dump truck, then a car, and then us. And we were just traveling down this road doing, the crossroad, doing about 50. Um, and we were coming to this corner, and we were going to turn left. So we were starting to slow down a little bit to make the turn. And all of a sudden, there's this great big puff of dirt, just dust and dirt in the air all over. And what had happened is one of the cars, so there were cars stopped at both sides of the crossroad there at the stop signs, and one car had signaled the other one to come, and she pulled out right in front of that dump truck that was loaded full of dirt, of topsoil. And that dump truck had hardly any time to react. She pulled right in front of it, and it was just immediate. Pushed
Oh
the
wow.
It pushed the car about 150 feet before he got that stopped. It had enough weight. Okay, so you've got 5 cars plus the truck. plus you've got a house on one corner, and all these people started to gather, and we're trying to negotiate so that we can make the left turn. We made the left turn, and I could see that nobody was responding to what had just happened. They were getting out of their cars and kind of milling around and talking to each other. But in my mind, sorry, in my mind, it was like, what's next? Okay, so I'm two cars behind, and all these other cars are right there. I had to run to get around what had taken place there. I had to run. I was the first one on scene. And all these other people, they, what do I do? What do I do? And what had happened is they had not been through that scenario. Now, I've been through that scenario before. Okay, and I've also put it through my brain. I've operated that scenario. What would I do in this situation? Okay. Anyway, I was first there. I was able to help this lady. Man, it was horrible. Dump truck hitting a little Hyundai car. The car lost.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's those kinds of things that you've got to go through in your head and say, okay, what would I do in this situation? Yes, it's hard. And what's funny, we did not plan this, right? We did not plan this discussion. But what's interesting is the Stoics, they used to call it premeditatum malorum. I've got a little thing that I review on occasion. But it says, and that's Latin for it's a premeditation of evils. And it's the exercise of imagining things that could go wrong or be taken away from us. It helps us to prepare for life's eventual setbacks and develop resilience in the face of uncertainty. The premeditatum malorum is designed to keep us, equally prepared and strengthen us for any possibility. And so Seneca said this, he said, all the terms of our human lot should be before our eyes. Now, premeditatum malorum, you might view it as a pre-mortem instead of a post-mortem.
Yes, we have talked about this before.
We have.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, instead of after the fact and pulling it apart and saying, okay, what happened? What should I have done? Why not? And I'm not saying expect the worst. What I'm saying is visit the worst and say, am I ready for this?
Yeah.
And what would I do? And so, you asked me a deep question. What do I do? That's the view that I actually had this on my desk. I was going to put it away. I have a pile of papers here I need to put away, and I knew that it was there. But anyway, I plan for the best. Okay, I plan for that, but I walk through the pre-mortem and say, okay, what if this thing all falls apart? What's the worst that could happen? And what would I do? How would I handle that? Expecting that the best is going to happen.
Yeah, that's a lot healthier than our natural default, which I think might be more of despairing.
Well, it's despairing, it's panicking, it's abdicating and saying, well, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
So-and-so did this to me. Yeah,
all of those things are very reactive and not, I don't know. There's a lot that goes wrong when we take the other view, and I think that's where you hear about all of these horrible things of substance abuses and suicides and depression and all of that is because we're not taking a healthier view of life's circumstances. As a Jesus follower, I love the scriptures, which are filled with instruction about these types of things. Jesus says, you will have trouble in this world. Just
It's
because
inevitable.
I'm a Christian or a Jesus follower doesn't mean my life is going to be easy
Nope.
or free from trouble. But there's a hope there that we can have, in trusting and knowing that it's ultimately for our good and for His glory, and we can rest in that and have some hope there, so that we don't have to despair. Now, all of that is great and fantastic for my mental well-being, but to your point, there are still things that we can and should be doing to help ourselves through these things. And
Right.
I love what you're saying about, what's next. I have right here on my whiteboard, it says, what is the wise thing to do, or another way is, do the next right thing. Instead of panicking in such a moment, or despairing in such a moment, it's okay, let me acknowledge that this is really sucky and it's hard or it hurts. But then what's the next step?
Yep.
What do I do now? And I guarantee you the answer is not to freak out or despair or kick rocks or, blame somebody else, or, all of these things that we want to do because it's easy.
It's normal. Yeah.
Yeah, all of that is very normal. And I'm still doing all of those things too when things are hard. But at some point we've got to, in a sense, pick ourselves up and just, remember the truth and the hope that we have, and then take an action, a simple, small, easy next thing,
Yep.
and move forward.
Yeah.
So
Jocko Willink puts it this way: take a breath, make a call, execute. So
yeah, that's really good. That is really good. Yeah. I was, at the same time that you were dealing with all of this, thousands and thousands of people in Central Texas were dealing with this flash flood that
yeah.
came
Wow.
really in the middle of the night with very little notice.
Okay.
And they're still looking for people that are missing, and so many have died, and the destruction is incredible. And there are people on both sides of the camp that we're talking about here, those who have run into the trouble and are trying to help and to rescue and to take care of those things. And then there's others who are just, they're paralyzed with pain and fear and loss and trouble, and all of that is still very real. But there's different ways that people are handling that, and
Yeah.
I think some of it is healthy, and some of it is probably not.
Right. No, it's really unfortunate what happened there, and what a surprise.
Yeah.
There again, that's not something I would conceive in my mind. What do I do in a flash
Right.
flood?
Yeah. Right.
But going through some scenarios in your head and saying, what would I do if I had a flat tire, or
Yes.
I couldn't find a jack for the tire, and all this stuff just keeps rolling on you. I've got the wrong wrench, or
Yeah.
I need the lug nut key, or
Yeah.
and just playing through that, will prepare you for something like a flash flood. It may, but
Right.
at least it gets you on the right vein of thinking, if that
Yes.
makes sense. And I'm not disparaging anybody here. I'm just saying, let's learn from this.
Yeah.
You've got that that Coast Guard swimmer. I mean, he put himself in situations, training, that he was
Yes.
prepared so that he could save several people. What a heroic effort! But
Yeah.
he had trained himself to be ready for. He probably never trained for a flash flood in the middle of
Right.
Texas. He's in the Coast Guard, for heaven's sakes. He's probably going to be out
Yeah.
in on the ocean or some. and I don't know the situation there enough to speak to it, but that's probably not something that was in his wheelhouse. Was, yeah, I'm going to go in Central Texas and
Yeah.
rescue people from a flash flood. That was probably not on his radar. I don't
Yeah.
know, but he had put himself in other situations where what's next, how to
Yeah.
so that he could look at it. Um, I know I've talked about this before, but there's a guy. Oh, why can't I think of his first name? Um, Boyd is his last name, from the Air Force. He came up with what he called the OODA Loop. You observe, you decide. Let's see. No, you observe, you orient yourself. So there's two O's. So OODA.
Okay.
So you observe what's going on, you orient yourself to it, you make a decision, and then you take action, and then you roll through it again. Was that action the
Mm,
right action? You start to observe, and then you orient yourself to
yeah.
whether it was or wasn't the right decision. Then you make a new decision, and then you act on that, and then you revisit it again. You orient yourself to, okay, was that last decision the right or wrong one? Orient yourself to whether it was right or wrong. Make it, and so he calls it an OODA loop, and it's
Mm,
they teach that in the military, and I'm sure that this combat, well, I guess he's a rescue swimmer. I'm sure he would have learned that. You observe,
yeah. That's
orient to
great.
it, you make a decision, then you act on it, and you just operate that loop, and you just keep. They call it the OODA loop. Boyd is his last name that came up with that. He was a fighter pilot in Korea, and
Okay.
what they did was they taught that to fighter pilots so that they could, there's a lot of speed there, and so they had to process
Mm,
really quickly. Okay, this is what's happening. Orient to it, make a decision, act on it, and he just taught that OODA loop.
interesting. Wow. Yeah, that's really good. It's a good takeaway for the lesson today. There's a couple things we can do to sharpen our mental fitness here. First is recognizing that our feelings are real and that
Oh yeah,
there's trouble in our life and that we have choices to make in that.
panic's normal.
And yeah, panic is normal. But we can also do something with that. Firstly, I would say, golly, if you're not friends with Jesus, figure that out, because that's ultimately where our hope comes from. And then apart from that is do the next right thing, the smallest
Yep,
incremental
whatever it
thing
is.
in your situation, whatever it is, because you can't prepare for everything. Um, and then this OODA loop, I think, is fantastic too. So there's some great takeaways here that we can apply for the tough circumstances that we're bound to face. If you're not in one now, it's coming. So
It's
this
inevitable.
is a great lesson
Yep.
for us. Yep.
Hopefully, it's not
Yep.
a flat tire on your way to work today. So,
Yeah. Right.
but if it is, just accept it and run the OODA loop.
Yep.
Hey, I've got a
Exactly.
flat tire. What's the next right thing?
Yep. Awesome. That's really good stuff today, Todd. Thank you for sharing your story
Well,
and helping us process that a little bit.
thanks, and my best to you.
Yeah. All right. Have a
Have a
great week, Todd.
have a good week.
Blessings to you.
Thanks.